Welcome to Pivot and Thrive. I'm Karin McCarthy, founder of Vermont Collaborative Circle, a community resource for entrepreneurs dedicated to making Vermont the place where businesses and families thrive. In the Pivot and Thrive interview series, we're showcasing business leaders who are demonstrating creativity, collaboration, and resilience, with the hope that we can learn from each other so we can accelerate the success of small businesses in Vermont. Before we begin today, I'd like to recognize the Abenaki Nation on whose traditional land we are having this discussion. We acknowledge their rich cultural history and honor them as the past, present, and future caretakers of this land. As this interview is taking place during the pandemic, we are having this conversation virtually, and this interview is being recorded. We'll have the opportunity for a brief question and answer session at the end, so feel free to populate your questions throughout the call, and we'll address them before we close. Without further ado, today I'm joined by Kate Bentley, the maker and owner at Goldenrod Jasper Co. Thank you, Kate, and welcome. I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. My name is Kate. I live in Vermont. I live in Lincoln, Vermont. My studio is in Bristol, so just a short drive from my home. I just recently started this business as a potter and weaver full-time. My background is in a few different areas. It's always sort of been a hand-based sort of thing, working with my hands in some way, but I've been in Vermont for about 10 years, and for most of that decade, I've been really focused on different healing arts practices and body work. I was a massage therapist, a yoga therapist, and a Chinese medicine practitioner for a long time. And like most people out there, when COVID hit, that sort of went away. I was also working part-time at a nonprofit, and that went away as well. So I have that in my background, but prior to that, a long, long time ago, I originally went to school for ceramics and photography, and my love of working with clay and just being a maker and a crafter has always sort of been in the background of my life, and has really been something that I've done on the side, or have kind of always thought, oh, I'll do that more when I retire, or, somewhere down the road. And one good thing of the pandemic is that it sort of moved all of those obstacles and excuses that I had, or thoughts that I had about only being able to do this down the road, and has sort of opened up a really unique opportunity for me to be able to do something that I love dearly now and make it a full-time gig.
Thank you. Thank you. It's so inspiring to hear that you were able to take this challenge and to make it an opportunity for you to use your time in a way that supports you and what brings you joy and also sustains your family. So I'm glad to hear that you're able to follow that passion and make a career out of it. That's exciting. Can you tell us about the story behind your business name?
Yeah, so Goldenrod Jasper, the name really came to me from thinking about things that I love to do in Vermont and experiences that really have sort of carved out little homes in my heart, and that really sort of speak to my love of both clay and fiber and my relationship to them. So one of the things that I really love to do is take time in the summer to just be really present with my kid, and we spend a lot of time at the river and swim spots. And a couple of years ago, we had access to this really lovely private spot on the Huntington River, and we would walk there almost every day, and we kept finding this red river jasper. Sometimes it was small chunks, sometimes it was really large chunks. And it just became this thing that my child and I would do to just go hunt for jasper. And I loved it. So that's part of my name. It kind of reminds me of clay, finding things in the river, just sort of that earth element that I sort of associate with pottery. And the goldenrod part comes from my background as a homesteader. So for a little while, we raised a small flock of Shetland sheep for wool. And that's a whole other, day-long story, my adventures in sheep keeping. But I will never forget, we moved with my sheep one time. We moved our whole homestead. And there was, it was a process. The last field that we had them in, I no longer have the sheep for life circumstances, but the last field that we had them in, I loved watching them because they just roamed through this field of goldenrod, and it brought me so much joy to see. And at the end of sort of the grazing season, all that was left were these like stripped strands of goldenrod that reminded me of willow. And so I've dried them and have tried weaving different things with them. And so that was the connection to weaving and wool. And then the jasper is the connection to clay and the earth.
Wow. Thank you. And yeah. I didn't realize that we had more things in common, but I now have a little sheep herd. So I might have follow-up questions for you after this call. So thank you. Thank you for sharing the origin story for your business name. That's really great. You've had a total transformation in your career. Can you tell us what's changed for you in the last year?
I think it might be easier to sum up what hasn't changed. I think everything felt like it changed. In the last year, I started the year as a single parent living in a log cabin at the top of a mountain, who had my own business as a part-time body worker. And then I was also working part-time at a nonprofit. And of course, when the pandemic happened, all of that sort of went on hold and shut down. And I just really ended up being a full-time mom / teacher on a computer. And I lost my part-time job and could not reopen my bodywork practice in a way that felt safe to myself and to my clients, because a lot of my clients were immunocompromised. So I can't pretend that it was all super rosy. And I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. There were definitely many, many days of, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? How are we going to get through this? That's been most of the summer, actually, most of my year. And in the back of my mind, when I started to check in with what was underneath all of that sort of panic and fear response, there was just this question of, well, since everything is so unknown and you don't really have a way to predict what's going to happen a year from now, 6 months from now, what would you be doing if you could just pick something that made you really, really happy? And for me, it was coming back to pottery. And so I kind of chewed on that for several months and thought, yeah, that's cool, but how do you make a living at that? I know people can do it, but can I do it, especially as a single parent in a pandemic with very little resources? Because I want to acknowledge that too, that I don't come from a whole lot of privilege. Like, yes, I have privileges, but I didn't, have an unlimited source of income to start this. So I just kept coming back to that question of, okay, everything seems really big and unknown and scary. So what can you focus on that just makes you really, really happy? Because at the end of the day, we just still don't know. So fill your day with things that make you happy.
Mm. What helped you in making that decision? Did you have inspiration or guidance in any way? What was it that helped you to see that as being possible?
I think a few phone calls to friends where I was panicking and trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life. I'm pretty open about having a wonderful therapist. I think my therapist was like, you can do this, Kate, go for it. And yeah, I think if I'm being super honest, it took a lot of mental work to get past all of my negative thoughts that were like, this is a horrible time to do this. How selfish of you. Like, how are you going to make this work? And so it was just through conversations with a couple of close friends. But I think admittedly, most of that was just me talking myself into it.
Good. I mean, it's important to have people that you can have that sounding board experience with, but I think you're right. You have to know in your own heart, in order to hear it from other people. So I'm glad that you were able to, have that connection with other people to help guide you in that process, but also to have that grounding center in yourself to know what, how you want to spend your time and your talent. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Transformation can be really unsettling for folks. When you're feeling off center, what is it that you do to help you feel grounded in your purpose? What helps you to stay connected?
So traditionally that was art in some way, shape, or form. I've gone through a couple of major life transitions. About 7 or 8 years ago, I got really, really sick and ended up with a Lyme diagnosis, but it took a long time to figure out. And that dramatically altered my life. Mm-hmm. I left the job that I had, was pretty much bedridden for almost a year while I was trying to get better. And everything that I thought about myself or everything that I associated with myself, the type of work that I did, etc., was gone. And so it was a really profound process to sort of have transformation like forced upon you in that way. And, since then I've been through other transformations and transitions. I've gotten a divorce, I've become a single parent. And I think I've just learned to embrace that everything is just constantly transitioning. And it sounds super cliche to just really feel like just letting that process happen. But one of the things that's always sort of brought me back to center was some kind of craft with my hands, where I'm less in my head and just more in like a really moment to moment process. And at a lot of points in my life, it's been weaving because I don't always have access to a pottery studio. And so with this big transition, it kind of felt like, okay, well, this is what brings me back to focus, is now that I get to be in a studio every day, it helps me just sort of reset when I start to feel like, wow, we still don't know what's happening. That really helps. Going for walks really help, just being outside. For me, it's just focusing on one day at a time. And I think there are so many parallels to life and being in business, like life currently and being in business, where it feels like there's a million things that could go wrong. There's a million things that are unknown and a million things that you have to figure out all in one day. And it can get really overwhelming to just think about that. Like, I have this visual of, when someone opens a scroll and it just like rolls all the way across the room. That's what to-do lists for me feel like. It just, I think what brings me back is one, just getting my hands in clay or playing with wool and just taking it one thing at a time, one day at a time, and knowing that the important stuff will get done. And then whatever didn't, it's still there tomorrow.
Sure. I mean, that's the truth of it. If there's anything that, that this community could help you to achieve, sometimes I find that to-do lists are better when shared. So is there anything that you're tackling, striving for, that you would maybe find some reprieve if other people, could teach you a certain skill or share a secret from their experience? Is there anything that you're working on that would be helpful?
Yeah. I love just connecting with other people that are going through life as a business owner too, and just hearing how it's going. But I think currently one of the things that I need support and sort of like a nudge around and insider info is just the shipping process. Mm-hmm. I almost sold out completely of my first shop update, which was amazing. And admittedly, I wasn't totally prepared for. So I had to scramble and figure out shipping, and vastly underestimated what it cost to actually ship pottery.
Mm.
And so I'm still trying to figure out the best way to ship in an environmentally friendly way. That's a top priority for me. And in a way that doesn't really cut into my expenses as a business owner, but also doesn't feel so outrageous to the customer.
Mm-hmm.
So shipping is a big area. And the other thing that I would love any sort of insider info on is, now that I've sort of launched this retail piece, which is both made to order pieces. There's a small line of made to order pieces for dinnerware, but then there's also sort of one of a kind pieces. And so I have that ability to sell directly to people, but I would love to collaborate with different Airbnbs that are hosts to, Vermont artists, smaller retail shops, different things like that. So I can start to work on wholesale accounts.
Yeah, and certainly keeping it local if possible, so then you don't have to worry about that shipping expense.
The shipping.
If you haven't seen Kate's Instagram at Goldenrod and Jasper Co, the photos that you've posted of your eco shipping materials are so beautiful. They're just really stunning. I mean, even just the wrap that she uses is pretty. So check it out. I was really impressed to see it, and it looked like you put hemlock in your shipping boxes too, or some gorgeous.
Yeah.
It looked like an experience just to open one of your gift boxes. So well done in creating that customer experience and keeping the environment in mind. Now, in terms of how people might connect with you if they have ideas, what would be a good way for people to reach out to you if they have thoughts on shipping or experiences that they might share?
Yeah. If you're on Instagram, you can definitely send me a DM. You can send me an email. Either of those ways tend to work. I am on Facebook. I do technically have a Facebook page, but I'm not super active there. Thank goodness for technology, where Instagram just does all of that for me. So I would say Instagram, or just directly emailing me.
Great. And this has been, you talked about some of the challenges that you've experienced and that you're learning to manage in this transition, but this has been such a challenging year for folks for so many reasons. Are you able to share with us some of the obstacles that you're addressing and what's helping you to get through it?
Yeah. I think probably always my number one obstacle is being a full-time single parent with, traditionally I could rely on okay, my kid is at school from 8 to 3 every day. And that was really not a given. That wasn't something that we could count on going into the school year. Thankfully, at least in our community, my child is still able to go in person, but that sort of, I feel like it's always hinging on maybe going away. So childcare tends to be, my number one moving piece to every puzzle that I do. Finances are always a big challenge, especially, as a single parent who had all of my income gone. I was fortunate enough to get a little bit of unemployment and a little teeny tiny little severance package, and that went all into the business. And now I'm riding on, okay, I did this. And so now I really need it to work.
Yeah.
So I really just take it one day at a time. Okay, I have my kid in school today. Okay, this is what I sold today, and it's working out. And so I think those challenges are sort of always in the background for me. And then there are little challenges like sort of packing and shipping. And you and I were talking about this when we were just sort of testing the sound. Just as a business owner, you have to do everything if you're the only person in business, or you outsource, which is great, but I don't have the resources financially to outsource everything. So my challenges are often, I have to Google how to do something on my website. and then I get sucked in and it's like an hour later.
I think we can all understand that one.
Yeah. So I think that's another big challenge, is feeling like, okay, I wanted to do this thing because I love the process of making pottery or weaving or just being connected with the materials and art. And then what I find is that's maybe, that probably feels like 40% of my business at the moment, where 60% feels like trying to troubleshoot things or build a website or doing, the photography for pieces, and then spending multiple hours trying to list them. And so that's one of my biggest challenges, is to sort of balance all of that and recognize that it needs to happen, but not let it sort of swallow me whole, that I forget to do the fun parts.
You've just started this business in the last 9 or 10 months, maybe even short, 3 months? Holy moly. Yeah. Okay. So I was going to ask you, what would you suggest to folks who are just starting out, really, really, truly just starting out? What would be your nugget of advice or insight for them? What have you learned in this process that if someone had given you this gift of knowledge, you might be able to support someone in starting out a little easier?
Yeah. I would say do as much research ahead of time as you can. Make a good plan. Like, can I financially be able to do it? Because there's nothing worse, I think, than starting out with this idea of like, yeah, I get to do this thing that I love, and then really, really struggling, and that sort of overtakes your love of it, and then you don't really love it anymore. So I think the best advice that I can give is plan as much as you can, research as much as you can, and then at some point, just go for it. You go for it, because I think there is that balance of like, okay, I've researched the cost of this, and this, and here's how I'm going to do it. And at least for me personally, I can go in research mode and sort of get stuck in research mode. And then I just really have to push myself to like, okay, you've planned as much as you can possibly plan, and now you just have to go for it. I think resources like this, there are so many good communities out there, Instagram pages, social media, so many good opportunities to just learn from other small businesses. And that's one of the things that I love about both small businesses in Vermont, but also social media right now, is that people are really, really open to saying like, this did not work for me, I don't recommend it, or like, oh, you need to go do it on this website, or here's how you do it. And it's been a really good community of business owners.
That's so great to hear. It's something that's definitely been inspiring to me too, is that everybody's going through these transformation periods together at the same time. And so I believe the more we can come together and share our experiences, our insights, and advice to each other, the faster we can succeed. We can learn we don't have to learn from our own mistakes. We can share in that learning and accelerate the pace of our success. So that's my hope in bringing people together for these stories. So thank you for sharing. I'm curious, we're socially distant. How are you finding community? Community is everything. What's inspiring you? Who's inspiring you? How are you feeling connected to the people who are not near you anymore, but are sharing the experience as well?
Yeah. All community feels like it's done online or via the phone right now, which admittedly, I'm like introvert to the extreme. So I kind of am loving it. But it makes it really challenging. So, like I said, I spend way more time on social media now than I did pre-pandemic. And I actually think it's a healthier relationship now, because I'm seeking out those kinds of communities that I can ask people from or ask people questions about. I have, sought out some advice from friends who have started other businesses. But it's really all online, and I would love to say that it's been great and super rosy, but there are also a lot of days where it's really hard and you feel really isolated. And I think I would feel that pandemic or not as an only person in business, but it just feels extra heightened right now by, oh, I can't go to this meeting of other business owners in person and have coffee. It just feels a little more isolated. So just kind of am taking what I can get. And it tends to all be social media at the moment and connecting with people through that.
Yeah. And I think that is so relatable. I feel like everybody's having that shared experience of craving connection and community, and having to find it in new ways. And you're right, virtual is the way of the world right now, for better or worse. So that you're maximizing those opportunities and using it to build new connections. I think that's great. And if there are ways that we can help you in this community, I would be happy to help. I feel like the reason I created Vermont Collaborative Circle is to create the community that I feel like I need as an entrepreneur. The collaboration, I get a lot of energy from collaborating with people. So I love that you're experiencing and sharing that too in a virtual way. And so I'm glad that we can hold this space open so that we can learn from each other. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's really important, being able to learn from each other, both behind the scenes and I feel like as a business. I wanted to bring this up a while ago and then kind of forgot about it, but I think it was when you were talking about advice to give to other people and just sort of this idea of you can research it and plan as much as you want and then you just have to go for it, because at least for me, I really struggled with, I shouldn't do this until I'm already great at it or until I've already figured it out. And it's just so not the case. Like, it's okay to say to another business owner, I don't have a clue what I'm doing. It's okay to say to customers, wow, I'm totally overwhelmed with how much you're supporting me. I'm going to need a minute to figure out how to ship all this to you. Like, it's really okay to be vulnerable and authentic in the process of starting a business. Because I think we often think that we can't do it until we're like perfect at it and we know what we're doing. So
I think that is so true. I know I call myself a recovering perfectionist. And what I'm trying to practice is that real is better than perfect. And so, just putting yourself out there and getting feedback. And that's what, there are whole fields of study about change management, where if you're getting feedback from people at the start, midway throughout, you're going to have a better product and a better customer experience, because you'll be able to dial in and design your product around what works for the people that you're engaging with. So I think you're not alone in wanting it to be perfect and right before you put it out into the world, but it's actually it can be a really informed way to grow your business if you're taking feedback and kind of showing that authentic space of connecting with your audience and asking what they need and doing a little bit of that dialogue. So I think you're really smart to be working in that sphere. We talked about this a little bit. Running a business, starting a business is a full-time job, and even under normal circumstances, you wear a ton of hats. Is there anything in particular that you would appreciate learning from other people? You talked about order processing. Is there anything that might help you to focus your priorities if you knew that your partnership was able to grow with the resources that someone might teach you?
Yeah. I think my answer for that might change depending on the day, but right now, what my next goal is that I'm trying to still figure out is really how to get more wholesale accounts, more wholesale isn't the word that I'm looking for, but it's partly wholesale accounts, but also getting into more local shops and having more of a presence in some of those amazing storefronts Vermont has just a plethora of really cool shops that showcase just all local artists. And So I'm trying to kind of toy with, does that make sense for me as a business? I think it might. And so I kind of want to pursue that a little bit. And I have some experience seeing it done. I used to work for another production potter. But it all feels like sort of this really big question mark of, do I want to do it? Does it make the most sense? And if so, how do I want to do it? And how do I get my foot in the door? Because that's one of those few things that feels like it would give me a little bit more stability to then keep doing the other things that I love. But it just feels like a big question mark at the moment.
Do you have an idea of what is the right size for your business? Would it help you to have other people making with you or supporting your administrative processes?
That would be lovely. I think, big term goal, yes, I don't want it to be just me. I was really fortunate. I just mentioned I got to work in production pottery. So I went to school, I went to college for ceramics and pottery, or ceramics and photography. And when I got out of school, I was really, really lucky to get a job at a production pottery down in Georgia, and worked there on and off for a couple of years. And I had this amazing experience of watching a woman run this business and employ multiple people in this really artistic town, pay them really well, and give them a good job experience. And so that's my goal, is that I would love to see myself grow in the next year and have 2 to 3 employees, both giving people a job or an outlet if they're looking to do the actual pottery process. But then I would love to hand off all of the, hey, can you put this button up on my website? Can you do this? Can you do that? I would love to sort of have someone that helps with that, or potentially, employ someone to do all of the shipping. It would be lovely to do that, because that's one of my goals, is to not only have this be, productive and a stable business for myself, but I want to be able to provide good paying work for other people in the community.
That is such a fantastic goal to have. And I'm excited to showcase your business and help you grow the audience for your products and highlight the good work that you're doing. And I mean, your story of transformation, I didn't realize that you just opened this business 3 months ago. Your website is beautiful. Your work is stunning. And and wrapped in eco products and actual living green boughs is really impressive, Kate. So I think you should certainly be proud of that. And then just to have that aspiration of supporting other people and helping them to share their talents through your work and create a more opportunities for employment in Vermont. That's great. That's fantastic. If you could describe the Vermont that you hold in your heart, what would you say?
The Vermont that I have been lucky enough to experience is really a community of people that are just extremely hardworking and often are doing more than one thing and just making it work. But also what I see in Vermonters is that, yes, they tend to work really hard, but they also really value and put an emphasis on finding ways to enjoy the place that we live, whether, that's skiing or just, spending the day at the river. We have access to so much that is so beautiful. And at least in my small circle, what I see is that people prioritize spending time out in that beauty in a really respectful way. Hopefully in a respectful way. And I love that. I think, people work hard and they grind pretty hard for things, but they also prioritize just being outside and doing things that make them happy too. And that's something that I want for myself, and that I want to show my kid. And it's okay to work really hard, but also go have fun and do things that are important and that make you happy.
That's such good advice. What are some of those things that you do in the winter months for, we're in the darkest time of year. So how do you enjoy your outside adventures? What's getting you through?
At the moment, they seem less and less, but I think that's because, as a newbie business, I'm dropping my kid off at school. I'm hustling really hard. And then by the time I pick my kid up or I get home, it's dark. And that's tough. So right now, my self-care looks like eating dinner early and going to bed early.
That's fair. That's totally fair.
Yeah. But once it starts to stay lighter longer and I'm not waking up in the dark and getting home in the dark, I live on this road that gets closed in the winter and it's great. And I love taking my dog for walks. And that is a huge part of my self-care. And I'm looking forward to a little bit more daylight for that.
Nice. Oh, thank you. Well, we'll take some questions. If anyone has them, feel free to populate your questions in the chat, or you can come unmute yourself if you'd like.
Here we go. Hey, Kate. It's Devin here, and I'm up in Burlington. And I also took a plunge in the last 6 months doing a small business, making like wooden crafts. So I definitely understand what you're going through and the challenges at this point, wearing all the different hats and all that. One of the questions I had was about marketing for your website. I know you mentioned you had a successful launch. What different platforms did you use to help promote your product and your business early on?
Yeah. Most of it is through Instagram at the moment. Mm-hmm. I pulled on my friends and said, hey, I'm doing this thing. Please tell people about it. And I started posting on Instagram just as soon as I got a space and started making something and sort of built that momentum before I ever sold anything. So Instagram seems to be the main source, but everyone says don't put all your eggs in one basket. So I have tried TikTok in the last week, and that's crazy, but I think that there's a lot of potential there. Facebook is another good one, but sort of like I said early on, I don't spend a lot of time there, but I've connected Instagram to that. Having an email marketing list is huge. And I think really, on my Instagram and specifically, I talk a lot just about small business stuff too, or at least I feel like I do. Like, hey, this is a great way to support small businesses. If you can't buy anything, please like and share, spread the word, and just try to help sort of inform and educate people that might be looking at my feed of like, oh, I get that not everyone can buy pottery right now. Like, I get that that's not a priority, but if you could like it and share it, it's huge. And so I do a lot of encouraging for that. And what I have also found is just engaging with other people tends to really help. If someone writes on your page, write back to them, or take the time to do that. So I'm not sure if that's super helpful, but
yeah, no, it is.
That's my strategy at the moment.
Yeah. A quick follow-up. As you're growing, obviously you want to grow the business, but there's also a limit to how much you can handle production-wise. How do you balance, I guess, like wanting to, create this booming business, but also realizing the limitations that you have with regards to, making product, but also, like you mentioned, shipping and doing all the other things with.
Yeah. How do I balance it? In all honesty, some days I don't feel like I'm balancing it very well, and I feel very much like I'm in over my head. And then I have to talk myself down from that. And then, like I said, I just take it one thing at a time. It's going to be a really good problem for me to try to solve when I reach that point of having so many orders that I can't make them. So I'm thinking about it in the back of my mind, but I'm also not going to cross that bridge until I get there, because I'm already thinking about what it would look like to sort of train somebody to step into that production role, what kind of person I'd want to fill it. But there's no way I could actually advertise for something like that, because I have to pay myself and my bills first before I can realistically do something like that. So I feel like those are good problems that I'm looking forward to having to figure out, but I'm not there yet. So I'm focusing on the little problems that I do have to figure out right in front of me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great questions, Devin. Thank you.
Yeah.
We have a comment from Diane and Izzy who say, I don't really have any questions, but I just wanted to say hello and that your work is beautiful. I especially love the egg holder. I'll be reaching out soon. I love that egg holder too. I thought it was so cute.
Yeah.
I have two questions. What inspires your products, like the egg holder? And well, first I'll let you answer that one.
So I have this blend of loving things that are really, really functional, but also really beautiful, or things that just like feel good in the hands. And so like that egg holder, I love baking. I don't do it as much now that I've started this, but I'm notorious for forgetting to pull my eggs out ahead of time if they need to come up to room temp. Or I always have too many and I don't want to leave the whole thing out. So I just made this little one that fits, half a dozen eggs to set on your countertop and let things come up to room temp. So something that's functional like that, but it's also really pretty. And, for other parts of ceramics, just the way that a bowl feels in your hand, sort of that mixture of parts that are glazed and parts of the raw clay. I'm a big textural person, like a feel person. And so things like that sort of inspire the forms and the felt sense that I use with the glaze. But then aside from just things that are really functional and pretty, I also like things that are really not functional and that are just nice to look at. So one of the things that I've been playing is like how to sort of marry my love of weaving and ceramics. And so I've been doing these wheel thrown ceramic frames that I'm going to be doing some weavings into.
Oh, wow.
So I'm trying to balance getting a lot of functional things out there, because that's what I love. Like when I see a good mug, or when I go to someone's house and they have this like eclectic wall of mugs, like I could spend an hour just looking at them and being like, that's the one for me today. And I couldn't tell you why, other than it like feels good in my hands. So I love pottery for that reason. So part functional and part just really pretty.
That's great. My other question is, you talked about how valuable your email list has been in growing your business. How have you generated those contacts? What's supporting your email list?
It's my little social media feed, or anytime someone buys something, or, it's a friend, hey, can I put you on my email list? Little things like that. I mean, I'm not going to pretend that I have a huge email list by any means. I had, prior to starting a business, I had a private Instagram page, and I had like 1,000 followers somehow. I don't really know. I think that was when it was public, and at some point, I made it private. And so I had all of those people to pull from when I started my new page and said, hey, I'm moving over here. And some of them came and some of them didn't. So I had a little pool to sort of draw from. But otherwise it's just been friends and family, or asking people to spread the word. And again, just being really honest, like I get that pottery is not at the forefront of everyone's mind right now. But for the people that can afford to buy it or are interested in buying it, can you just share it? And it seems to be working.
That's great. Is there any particular product that you would like to highlight, or that we can help to share in this gifting season? Is there something that we can do to help you get more eyes on your marketplace?
Thank you. My favorite thing to make is dinnerware sets, like dinner plate sets. And so I sell them in sets of 2 or 4, and it's my most expensive item because it's a set of things. but it's my favorite. And so I like having something that's more expensive like that, but also like a lot of one-off pieces that are in the $20 to $30 range. So I think depending on what people are looking for, I'm hoping that I'll have a range of products. But I think my dinnerware sets are my favorite because I love eating dinner on handmade, like stout plates that have like a good lip. So, you know, when you've got that like juicy food, it's not going to run off the edge. But those are just my favorite things. And so I would love to make more of those and get those out to people, because sort of my tagline is handmade heirloom quality pieces, because I feel like when you spend money on something that's really well made and that you love, it's really cool to think about like, oh, I bet my kid's going to love that too. You know, like, oh, I'm looking forward to like handing this set of plates down to my kids so that they can enjoy it when they're an adult. I like the idea of sort of making pieces that last for a really long time, that sort of become a part of just like a family setting or a community setting. Does that make sense? It
does. I'm thinking about the plates of my childhood dinners and, you know, the ways that we come together and how, you know, people might think of them as products, but they become the fabric of our lives and memory and tradition. So thank you for helping to contribute to that.
Yeah, they really do. I mean, I'm one of 3 girls in my family, and just the little things, like we would fight over, that's my favorite fork, I want that fork. Or like when you go to grab a plate, I'm sure you have a favorite plate or a favorite mug. And I'm hoping that I can be those favorite plates and those favorite mugs for people.
That's great. We do have a question. It says, I actually do have another question. Do you ever come to Burlington for order drop-offs or having your products featured in local shops?
Yes, I would love to have my products featured in local shops. They aren't yet, so it's just on my website. And I've been toying with the idea of how to do drop-offs, especially now. There is an option when you buy things to not pay for shipping and do curbside pickup down here in Bristol. But the reality of it is that I am in Burlington from time to time, or I am in Middlebury from time to time. So if it works out, I'm happy to do a porch drop. Realistically, where I am with my business and being a single parent, if it feels like it's taking a lot of time, like, oh my gosh, we've just spent days emailing back and forth to try to coordinate a time, I don't know that that's something that I want to do a lot of, you know, because that can feel like a lot of time spent on logistics. But it's worked out organically a couple times, and I've been like, hey, are you home to friends? And they're like, yeah, great, I'm going to come and drop this off for you because I happen to be by. So I'm open to it. But I think sometimes it could get really, really tricky and maybe not time or cost effective for me as the business owner.
That makes sense. That's good. Yeah. It's good to keep it real.
Yeah.
And Diane says, I totally understand. Thanks.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today for this episode of Pivot and Thrive. It's my hope that in sharing these stories, we can learn from each other and accelerate the success of small businesses in Vermont. If you're interested in being involved and learning more, you can follow VT Collaborative Circle on Instagram and join our community. We're going to be joining together, launching an online community early in the new year. And so I'm really excited for the showcase and collaboration opportunities that are coming up. To learn more about Kate and see her beautiful work, and now you know how you can support it, you can visit at Goldenrod Jasper on Instagram, or her website is linked in the description of this group. And don't forget, we have another Pivot and Thrive coming up next Tuesday. We're showcasing Sarah Howley of Black Rose Briar, and I hope you can join us. I've really enjoyed hearing your story, Kate, and thank you for sharing what's inspiring you, what challenges and transitions you've experienced this year, and just for being so open and sharing your time and your talent with us. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, and thanks everyone for stopping in on your lunch break. And if you're thinking about doing a business, do it. And just go do the things that you want to do. And if you're in the market for pottery, let me know.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Take care, everyone.
Bye.
All right. Thanks.